So in my project, I'm looking at why authoritarian countries in Africa promote women as leaders. And although historically, democratic countries generally have had stronger outcomes in advancing gender equality when you compare them with other regime types, many authoritarian regimes in Africa have proven rather adept at adopting women's rights provisions and making extensive constitutional reforms and legislative reforms, but also in promoting women as leaders. And these outcomes are especially evident when it comes to political representation in legislatures, in subnational legislatures, and in the executive. And one finds very little difference between authoritarian countries and democratic countries in Africa when you look at these measures. So Rwanda, for example, an authoritarian country, has the highest rate of legislative representation for women in the world. Women hold 61% of the seats. They also have the highest level of female cabinet representation in Africa at 55%. Another example, a brutal election in Uganda was held last year, and after that, Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni, who's been in power since 1986, appointed a woman to the position of vice president, another woman to prime minister, and then a woman deputy prime minister. The Speaker of the House also became a woman after the untimely death of her predecessor. In Tunisia, President Kais Saied suspended the parliament and the constitution. He fired the prime minister and then appointed a woman, Prime Minister Najia Bouden, in 2021. And none of these appointments and electoral outcomes are an accident, nor is the fact that they are taking place primarily in authoritarian contexts in Africa. Okay, so we see something of a puzzle here in that we've had rising levels of women's representation in Africa. In fact, the percentage of women in African parliaments, for example, increased threefold since 1995. Yet at the same time, we're witnessing a period where there's been a decline in political rights and civil liberties, especially since 2005 in Africa, but also globally. And so this means that authoritarian countries are changing their strategies, and the political cost of older forms of rule, such as military rule, are becoming too high. And so what I'm showing in my project, which is going to result in a book and several articles, is that women leaders are part of a strategy for authoritarian regimes to remain in power within this new context, especially since the early 1990s. So the book is based on a cross-national comparison across Africa involving 150 in-depth interviews, content analysis of speeches by leaders, and the use of newspaper and secondary sources. I'm looking at 3 authoritarian countries, Zimbabwe, Rwanda, and Uganda, then 2 semi-authoritarian countries, Morocco and Mauritania, and then 2 democracies, Namibia and Botswana. So my book asks, under what conditions do authoritarian countries promote women as leaders, and what incentivized so many of them to change course and start increasing female representation. I also look at, do autocracies differ from democracies in promoting women? And then what are the consequences of the inclusion of women in politics when women are used to enhance the longevity of an autocratic regime? Is the political inclusion of women an opportunity for women, or is it a means of legitimizing an autocratic regime, or both?